AutoCAD is a great tool that can help you get your work done quickly and accurately. One way that it does this is with the Align command. This command tool will automatically move and rotate and even scale an object or objects for you based on 2 to 3 different defined points. So let's open up the Align command. Go to the chapter for this video, find your files, and go to align.dwg. In this file, I've set up just a few basic shapes, square, triangles, couple of arcs. And what we need to do is get all these objects to be aligned with some of the others. We're going to align them with a square. Now, some of them will fit perfectly, others will need to be rotated, and some will need to be scaled. Now, we can measure them all. For example, let's see, this square is 5 units wide. So it's 5 units by 5 units. Now, this arc has a radius that is 2.5 units. And from endpoint to endpoint, it's 5 units long. So in theory, we should be able to move it by using the move command, selecting the arc, right click, grab that endpoint, and it looks like it's lined up perfectly there. Now, we had to go through a lot of different steps to make sure that we did that. Let's shorten that up a bit. Let's use the align command. Just type in the word align, A-L-I-G-N, press enter. And we're going to first select the objects that you want to move. Now, the align command will move objects. It will also rotate objects. And then if you tell it to, it will also scale those objects. Well, we don't want to scale this object. We just want to do a move and a rotate. So we select all the objects. You could pick one, or you could pick everything in your file, honestly. Once you're done making your selection, press enter. Now you have to define 2 base points. It's 2 base points on your object to be moved, and then 2 points of where you're moving those points to. So it's kind of like grabbing this endpoint, moving it to here, and then we're grabbing this endpoint and moving it to here, since that's exactly what we want to do anyway. So we grab our first point. So we grab it here, and we say, okay, I want this point to go to here. So I click on that. Now, you see a white line there? It's just giving you a visual display saying, yeah, I'm moving it from here to here. It's not drawing that line. That line will go away once the command is finished. So I'm going to do the same thing here for point 2. Click here and click here. So that gives you a nice idea of where it's going. Now you can pick up to 3 different lines. And that's a really nice feature because it will help you to line up things very nicely, especially if you have 3 points that you want to kind of hold. Now, if it can't hold it there exactly, it will line it up as best as it can. It'll hold on to that very first point. It'll line that one up perfectly, and it kind of split the difference between the other 2. That's why typically I will only use 2 points because that's really about all I need for the majority of the applications. In this case, that's definitely all that I need. So once I've selected my reference points, press enter. And it's going to ask me if I want to scale these objects. No, I don't, because I don't want to change the size of this arc. I just want it to be lined up from endpoint to endpoint. So I'm going to select no. See, it moved it here. That was very easy to do. Now, in the case of this triangle, let's say I want this line right here, this face, to line up with this object right here on this part of my square. Not a problem. Let's pick the align command again. Select my object. I want this endpoint to go here. Let's say I want this endpoint to go here. Obviously, this line is smaller than this, so it's not going to line up from this point to this point. I'm going to demonstrate to you what it's going to do. Press enter. No, I don't want to scale it. And it moves it right there, just the way I told it to. Line it up between here and here. It rotated it, moved it, and it held that first point and then matched the second point as best as it could. I'm going to show you the align with the scale. So I'm going to use the align command. I'm going to pick this arc. Let's line up this point with that point, and then this point with that point. Now this arc is obviously a little bit bigger, so it's going to shrink down. So press enter, and it says scale yes. So it rotates it, moves it, and scales it down until it fits between those 2 points. So the align command is very useful and very practical, and will help you to line things up very easily. Now I'm going to show you 3 points here real quick. I'm going to align this triangle, this point to point 1, now this point to point 2, now this point to point 3. So you see here, it held that first one and then lined up these 2 as best as it possibly could. So it'll line up the second one as best and then the third one as best. So it kind of goes backwards. This one is absolute and it holds these a little bit better. Now, if I were to do this, pick the midpoint here, pick that endpoint, this point, pick there, press enter, no shrinking. It lines that up perfectly. So the align command is very useful. I use it a lot, especially when I need to move and rotate something. And if I need to move, rotate, and scale, then it's 3 commands into one. I'll get a lot of PDF files from outside sources, from third parties, and I need to align that with my line work. Well, a lot of times I've found that a PDF has been made not to scale. All the line work inside it is scaled relative to each other, but it's not to an actual scale. It's not correct. So I'll use the align command to line up that PDF to my line work to help me better trace or work with that PDF. So there are a lot of other different applications as well, I'm sure you can see. And anytime you're going to have to move and rotate something, consider using the align command. You might find it a lot easier to work with. Sometimes in AutoCAD, you need to make your objects a little bit longer, like a line or an arc. You can use the extend command, but maybe that's not practical. And besides, you don't have a line necessarily in this case to extend it to. Same thing with a trim command. There's no extra line, and you don't want to have to take the time or effort to draw that line. It just adds extra steps. Well, the command you can use is called the Lengthen command. Let's open up the align file, and I'm going to explode this box here just so that we can have lines to work with. Now, there are a couple of different ways to get to the Lengthen command. One is through grip edits. So if I select an object like this line, I go to one of the endpoints and I hover over it. I don't pick anything yet. But if I go to the Lengthen option, that's going to allow me to change the length of my line. Now, you can see here there are 2 dimensions. One is the overall dimension that my line is going to be when I'm finished. In the other box, the one that's active right now, it has the white background and the sort of the light blue highlighting of the numbers in it. That's the one I'm going to change. I can say I want it to be 2 units longer. So I type in the number 2, press enter, and my line is 2 units longer. So if I select this line again, and I go to the lengthen option, now I could maybe change it by the overall length and not necessarily just adding on a little bit to it. So if I do, I can press the tab key. Now let's say I want it to be 5 units total. And it does. So you have those options. Now, if you enter in a number, it should be positive. And if you enter in a negative number, it should be obviously negative. But that means it will reduce the size. And if there's no sign, then it increases the size. Now, you have a similar options here on an arc. If I select the arc, go to the endpoint, go to the grip, and select lengthen, I can change the angle. So you can see right here that it's telling me that right now this is at 90 degrees. If I want it to go all the way over to here or wherever it is, I just need to type in that number. So I can type in 180 and it makes the line go to 180 degrees. Now, if I'm on here and I press tab, what it does for an arc is it gives me access to the radius. So I can increase the radius up to 3 if I wanted. So that's a couple of quick ways that you can get to the lengthen command. Now, they're very limited compared to the actual lengthen command, but a lot of times that's really all you need because I can select this line, go to lengthen, and most of the time I'm going to be able to just click right where I want it. But if you type in the lengthen command, it's Lengthen, lengthen, then you have 4 options. You have delta, percent, total, and dynamic. Delta is kind of what the grip edit is there. Delta will allow you to change the length or angle, whatever the case is, by a certain value you enter. So if you want your line to be 5 units longer, you use delta and you type in the number 5. You can make it 5 units shorter by going to the delta option and typing in -5. It's the same way with your angles here. Go to delta, and that just changes what little part you're adding or taking away. So if you say, I need this line to be just a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, you know exactly how much that is, then you can. Now the total is just the total length. So if you say, I want this line to be, 10 units long, so I will go with total, and I'm going to say, I want it to be 10 units long, press enter, then I select it. See, it bumped it up right here just a little bit. Now if I pick the arc, it's going to make it 10 units long. Now you'll notice that when I select over here, part of this goes gray. That's because this arc is shorter than 10 units. And the end that I select, it's going to shorten it up to 10 units long off of this end. But if I go over here, it's going to shorten it up by this end. So now when I select this arc and I go to my properties palette and it gives me my total length, it's 10 units long. The lengthen command is a great command to get an arc to an exact length. A lot of times it's really hard to do that, but with the lengthen command, you can do that. So if I go back to my lengthen command, and I have my other two options, the percent and the dynamic. The percent will change the size or the angle by a percentage. So let's say I need this line to be at 25% of what it is now. So I pick percent and I type in 25, press enter, and you can see where I select is important because it takes away that end of it. And now it's 25% shorter. That's a great way to quickly divide something up. Now the dynamic option will allow you to lengthen your line or arc in real time by defining a new endpoint for that line. So if I select here, this acts essentially like the grip editing does. I'll use the dynamic and the delta probably the most often between the two. Now when I'm working with an arc though, a lot of times I'm going to use the total because I need this arc to be a specific length. I'll use that as well. So the lengthen command is a great tool to use to get your ends of your lines or arcs at exactly the right point, especially when you have nothing else to snap to. Sometimes in AutoCAD, you'll need to group similar objects together to form one object. You can use the join command to do that. It'll form a single line between two broken lines. Now, some object types that you can join are arcs, elliptical arcs, or that's a part of an ellipse, lines, polylines, and splines. Now, there are several different catches or nuances that you have to keep in mind when you're using the join command. The objects have to be similar, like a line to line or an arc to arc, and they also have to be in the same plane, meaning they have to have the same elevation. With the exception of splines or 3D polylines. Those you can combine because they're built to go into the 3D world. Now, each type of object has additional restrictions on it itself too, so we have to keep those things in mind. So right here we have a single line, and here we have two different lines. If we use the join command, J-O-I-N, and we pick these two lines to join, press enter, it won't work. It can't do it. Here we have a polyline, and this one is a regular line. We know these two are on the same plane and that they line up with each other. These two wouldn't join because they're not in line. And a line is a line. It's from point A to point B, so we can't get there. These two lines are. So if I use the join command here, press enter, click my two lines, press enter again, you'll see it's joined them back together to be one object. This is a polyline right here. And if I pick the join command, it's already one object, so it's not going to join them together. So you have to keep those things in mind. Here is an arc and a line and another line. If I start the join command and I pick all these objects, press enter, it combines them into a polyline. Here I have a line, a polyline, and an arc. If I start the join command and I pick one object first, press enter, I can always add in other objects, except you can't join a line to an arc when you do it this way. So if you want to join all of these lines together, you have to start the join command, pick the polyline first, press enter, then pick the line, then pick the arc. And now it's one object. Or you do like we did here, and you use the join command, M for multiple, and you just pick everything at one time. Then it will join them together. When it does, it creates it into a polyline, even if none of them are a polyline. So you have to keep those things in mind. Now, if I pick the join command again, and I pick this arc, and I pick this arc, press enter, it says these combined arc segments form a circle. Do I want to convert it to a circle? Click yes, and now I've made a circle. If I undo that, pick join again, and I select these two arcs, press enter, let's say no, then it's just not going to join them together. So you can see the join command is really useful and you can do a lot of different things to it. but it has a little bit of nuance to it. So let's select this arc and this arc, press enter, and it combined them together and it made it into a polyline. So you can see there are a lot of things you can do. There are a lot of things you can't do with arcs and lines. So if I go to pick these two, press enter, it combines it into a polyline. They're coplanar. They share a common endpoint. So that makes it easier to join things. Now if I pick this arc and this arc, press enter, it closes one of the gaps. So which one does it close? How do you tell? Let's pick up here and up there. It got the one farthest away both times. So keep that in mind. But because these two objects shared a common endpoint, it wanted to make it into a complete circle. These two objects did not. There were two gaps on it. And so it was only going to combine one gap at a time. So keep those things in mind, little nuances. And if it doesn't work the first time, that's okay. Just stop, think about it, try a different order. Try to make sure you're doing it in a multiple setting. It's much easier to grab things and put them together. And make sure the elevations are the same. And make sure one's not a polyline, one's a line, that type of a thing. But the join command will help you reduce the amount of lines you have and make the amount of objects look more like what's represented on your screen. In drafting, it's common practice to highlight changes to an issued drawing with what's called a revision cloud. Now, AutoCAD has a tool that will help you make that cloud. It's called RevCloud. That's the name of the command that you just type in, RevCloud. Now, the revision cloud command is very easy to use and it's very quick as well. Let's open up an example file so that we can have something to work with. Go to your chapter projects here and find the cottage plan and elevation drawing. Really, you can use any drawing or no drawing at all for this example. I just wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like using it in the real world. So let's say this is our drawing and we've made a couple of changes to this detail right here. In fact, we're going to say we changed this note. So what we'll need to do is issue a revision into our drawing. Now there are a couple of different ways that you can get to the revision cloud command. You can type in RevCloud right on your command line, or you can go up to the ribbon, go to the Annotate tab, and go to the Markup palette. Now here is Revision Cloud. Now I can just click on this icon right here and it will start working. Now I have a couple of options here on this flyout as well, and we'll go over those later on. But we can draw a revision cloud just as a regular rectangle, as a polygon, or you can do it freehand. The majority of the time, all you're going to need is the rectangle command, at least that option. So I'm going to click that. And if you haven't set up the revision cloud command already, or you haven't used it before in this file, you're going to want to set what's called the arc length. Now, a revision cloud is just a series of arcs. And in fact, what's being created is just a polyline with arcs. So you'll want to set that length of the arc. Now you come down here to your command line and click on arc length. Now you can do one of two things to define this width. You can just type in a number, that whatever you want, or you can just click from point to point inside your file. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to click here. Now where I click will define the length. So you have a minimum and you have a maximum. That means it will make the arc at least that small, but no bigger than this. So once you've defined those two sizes, you can start drawing. And I picked the rectangle option. So that means I'm going to draw a rectangle, a lot like the rectangle command, but it's going to make it look like a cloud. So I pick my first point of my rectangle. And then as I stretch it out, you can kind of see where it's going to be at and what my arcs are going to look like. Left click again, and there's my revision cloud. It's that simple. Now, if I pick the polygonal option, that gives me a little bit more freeway, and I just move where I want my revision cloud to go, and I click. And I can keep making great shapes. So if I've revised all of this, I can do that, and there's my revision cloud. Now, if I go to the freehand option, let's say I go to this note here, it just comes like this. That one's very easy to use as well. So this option works like a rectangle. You click 2 points, boom, boom, and it creates a rectangle shape. This one works like a polygon, so it'll go from point to point. The freehand goes just wherever I put my cursor at. So those are the 3 different ways to create a revision cloud. Now there's another way as well. Let's say I draw a rectangle, or let's say I draw a polyline. I go up to my revision cloud, I click on it, and I have different options. Remember, first we saw the arc length? Well, now I have object. I can also get to my rectangular, polygon, and freehand modes right there. But if I click on the object option or type in O, I can select my rectangle or my polyline, and it will convert it into a revision cloud. If I don't like the direction of the arcs, I can click yes, and it will reverse them. And it will work the same way on the revision cloud. Now you can also do this for just regular lines, or arcs, or circles, etc. So a lot of times people will use the revision cloud to draw bushes or the edge of a forest or a preserve area on your drawings. Now, if you want to manipulate these, you can just select them. You can delete, just like you would this rectangle or polyline. You can move, copy, put them on different layers, match properties, just like any other object. Now, let's say you want to edit these. Now, if I select it, you can see it looks like a polyline here. So I can do some grip edits. You can stretch it out, move it around. And if I go to my middle here, I can add a vertex. So you can do a lot with these different objects. And so you can change it, which is very useful. I can start any of these commands and still get to the same options. Now you can get to 2 different styles. You have the normal style and you have the calligraphy. This is the normal style. It looks all uniform. Now the calligraphy, though, has a thickness to it. It'll start off skinny on one of the arcs, and then it will get thicker. But they're created the exact same way. These are a little bit more visible. They look a lot more fancy, and it's up to you and your styling which way you want to use it. Either way, they both work the same way. You edit them the same way, and they're fantastic. So if you go back to your revision cloud command, and then you select the modify option, it asks you now on the command line, select the one you want to modify. Let's pick this guy here. Once you click that spot, you essentially start drawing on more revision clouds. So when you just say you needed to add more to your area, you click there, and then you can either delete that part or this part. I don't want to reverse the direction, and now I have a bigger revision cloud. So if you need to add to one of them or take away something of it, you always can. Revision clouds are very easy to create, and they're very easy to edit. So it makes them very useful, and it's really a piece of cake to create a revision cloud. Many times in AutoCAD, you need to be very specific about what objects you're selecting. Most of the time, you're just going to directly pick what you want. But let's say you wanted to pick a whole bunch of things all at one time with very little effort throughout a big area of your drawing. Well, you can use the Quick Select feature. Let's open up the cottage plan and elevations drawing as an example. Now, the Quick Select command can be gotten to by a couple of different ways. You can just type in Q Select to get to it, and then start it up right here. You can also go to the Home tab on the ribbon, then go to the Utilities panel, and this is the icon for Quick Select right here. Pick on that, and it starts it right up. The way I usually get to it is through the Properties palette. And that's because I typically leave the Properties palette open all the time while I'm working, because it gets me access to a lot of different things, one of them being Quick Select. That icon is right here. Find it, and then click on it. Now, this is a filtering tool, so it'll filter through your selections. So you need to select something. You have 2 options. One essentially is the entire drawing. If I pick this option, then it's going to select everything for me in my entire drawing. Now, if I pick this little crosshair bullseye looking button, that will bring me back to my drawing and allow me to select whatever I want. And you just make a normal selection set. I didn't want this here, so let's take that out. I only want to work with the text in this view. So I select everything here, and I press enter. Now you have a couple of options here where your filtering starts. One is by object type. Now, if I leave it on multiple, then it's going to just disregard the object type. Just whatever you have selected, that's what it's going to go with. Now, the list here that it gives us by clicking on the arrow is the options that you have available to you in your current selection set. So it's not going to list something on here that you can't even look for. So that's great. That makes things easier. We want text, so I'm going to select the text option. So that's your first selection. Your second selection of filtering is right here. It's in the properties. This will list you properties of your object type. So I can pick text by color, layer, line type, height, width, justification, rotating, things like that. So I'm just going to go with color. So from there, you have an operating filter or for operations. Now this means equals, not equal to, greater than, less than, or select all. So if I'm picking a color and I'm saying the value for that color, I want it to be by layer, and then I'm saying the operator is equals. So now I set up a filter that will select just the text according to its color, and its color equals, or that value for the color for the text is set to by layer. So if a text has been overridden and it's now set to a specific color, not by layer, then I won't pick that. So that's what we're going to do here. So then I have one more option. That is to include all of these objects in my selection set, or I can exclude them. So in this case, I'm going to include them because I want to pick just the text. Now, if I wanted to pick everything but text, I would use the exclude option. So that's a great way to get rid of something out of your selection set that you don't want to manipulate. So once you have all of your selection made and your filters set, click OK. Now, it took me a long time to tell you about that because I was showing you how to make that selection set. So these are all of the text right here. You can see I've picked everything. And now I can delete them, I can move them, I can copy them, I can change them all to a different layer, to a different color, whatever it is that I need to do. I will mess with just this text. So let me show you again how quick that can be if I don't have to explain how it works to you. So I'm going to make a selection set because you can make your selection before you start the command. Start this, pick text, color equals by layer, done. So I've selected just the text in this view. Now, if I wanted to do that differently, I would have to zoom in and start picking everything. And as you can see, this is a little bit more tedious. And it's likely that I will miss some text somewhere. So you can see why that can speed things up for you and make it very handy to use when you're trying to work with a lot of different objects, or maybe you're trying to select all the text, put them all on one layer, or change them all to by layer, or change them all to the color green, whatever it is. So it's a great way to filter out your selections to make picking things easier. In a different chapter, we looked at the command or feature called Quick Select. That feature allowed us to create a temporary selection filter for our current selection group. Now, I want to look at a different filter. This command is called Filter. It allows us to create selection filters and save them for later use. These filters can be much more complex than the QSelect command. Let's open up our cottage plan and elevations example drawing again. Now keep in mind that filters can be defined with more than one criteria, and they can be saved for later use. To get to the filter command, you just type in filter. Type that in on the command line and press enter. And you get up this object selection filters window dialog. The main difference between QSelect and filter is that QSelect is temporary, and it's defined by picking then filtering out what you want or don't want. Filter works by setting up the criteria ahead of time and saving it, and then you apply it. So what you need to do is create your filter first, unless you already have some saved. If you have some saved, you can go right here to current. Now, I have an unnamed saved, that's the default right here. There's a filter 1. And these are the filter criteria. It has to be an object that's a block, has to be on layer 25. It has to have this line type, this block name, this exact position, etc. Now, a lot of times trying to find something with an exact position will defeat your purpose. So if you want to go through and edit any of these filters, you can. You just select the filter type that you want to remove, then you go to the delete, and that will delete that one form of criteria from that filter. Let's also get rid of block rotation, named vector, and object is in here twice for some reason, so I'm going to remove that. Let's say we just want to look for a block of the name X16. So I'm also going to delete everything else. Now, once you've made this change, you're going to need to save it. So you come down here to the Save As window, and let's say it's block X16. Click Save As. So now that I saved it, it's current. It's in my list here. I can go to block X16, And once you've selected your filter, all you have to do is click the apply. So now you go and select your objects. And I'm just going to pick everything here. And it's going to try to find whatever block name that is. Press enter. And it didn't have any objects with that block name in my file. So that's okay, because now I know I don't have that block inserted in my file. So let's create a new filter. So you just come here and you can do a couple of different things. If you click on this button here, you can see all of the different options available to your filter. And there's a lot of them. You can also add Boolean filters, begin, end, and or not, etc. Let's just say I want to find a line. So I'm going to go to line. And once I select that filter object, I select add to list. So now I have my line. I don't want any of these items in here, so I'm going to delete them. Let's say I want to find a line that is by layer. So I need to come here and I go to the layer option. I select that and I click the add to list. So I add the layer option to the list, and now I have to define what layer it is. So I click on the select, and it will give me the options that are in my drawing right here. So let's say I want to find everything that's on the border layer. Click OK. That tells me what it is right here. Then I click add to list. So now I have an object that is a line and it's on the border. Let's save this. Let's call it border line. Click save as. That's current. Click apply. Select everything. And you can see I don't have a line on the border layer. So that's kind of crazy. Let's do this again. A lot of times it's easier to create a new item just from scratch. I can click the clear list button here. That'll clear everything out. And let's say I just want to pick something that's in my file. So I go to this add selected object option. I'm going to click on this object right here. When you do that, it brings in all the information that you can filter out. This is a polyline. It's on layer border, the line type, elevation, thickness, color. Let's just say I want to find what's on the border layer. So I just remove the items that I don't want to find. Let's give it a name. Just call it border. Click save as and apply. So when you click apply, that starts your selection process. So I'm going to pick everything here, press enter, and you can see now it's picked everything that's in the border layer. If I go to my properties palette, see here I have a polyline and it's just this one object. This is the only thing in my drawing that's on the border layer. So that's a great use of your filter. Now, if I go to filter again, and let's say I want to use an older filter that I've created. So I can do that. I'm going to pick this text 100. This will give me a text object that's on layer 35 and has a text height of 100 units, and the text style name is 100. Click apply. I'm going to pick through my whole drawing set. And you can see here, this text is highlighted. This text isn't because it doesn't match the criteria. This text is, this text isn't. Press enter. So now I have this in my selection set. I can go to the properties in my properties palette. I can change the color of all these items now to red. I can change their style. I can change their text height, whatever it is that I want to do. So if you have to manipulate or work with something that's very specific, you can do that by creating a filter and saving that, and you can always go back to it. Now, if I open up another file, I'm just opening up a blank file here, and I type in filter, you'll notice here that I have the same filters available. So as you create filters, your AutoCAD on your computer will remember those filters. It's not drawing specific, it's AutoCAD installation specific. So it'll save it in your registry. So you'll be able to create a filter and use it on all of your files all the time, until you go to another computer, of course. So that's a great tool that you can use to help you find what you need very quickly and very precisely. When AutoCAD first started, it was just a drafting tool, but over the years now it's developed into much more than that. It's a database management tool. Now, sometimes that data in your file will change or need to be changed. I want to look at the rename command. This command will help you change the names of assigned items such as layers, blocks, dimension styles, text styles, and so on. Having a system in place that standardizes your naming procedures is good CAD practice. You can also receive files from outside sources that might not be up to your standards, or that won't work with your files just because they have the wrong name. Now you can use the rename tool to change the names of outside data in those files. And that way their layers or their blocks will insert into your files seamlessly. Also, if you have conflicting dimension styles that need to look different but have the same name, this is another tool that you can use to help yourself out. Let's open up the ice rink example file. Now, in your file, to start the rename command, just type in rename. It's that simple, and press enter. You'll get the rename dialog box. It has two columns, named objects on the left and items on the right. The named objects are just the types of objects that you can choose from in your file. You can change blocks, views, styles, dimensions, layers, line types, materials, and so on. Let's look at blocks. So when you select on one of these named object items, it'll show you all the items in your file that you can rename. Select one of them. And when you do, it will put the old name in this box right here. Then you just click in this box here to what you want to rename it and just type it in. So let's say we want to change this door left. That's all we need. And click OK. And that's it. So when you go to insert that block now, type in the insert command, and you'll see your options here, door left. That's it. You don't change the block, you just change the name. So now I have that name available to me to use for a different block. I can call it door left hung 36 inches again, or whatever. It's very simple to use, and it can be very useful. So let's say they send you a file, they meaning someone else, and it has layers in it, and the layers don't follow your layer naming criteria. So you just click on the layer, that'll populate the old name right here, and you'll type in the new name. Let's say this needs to be building. Click OK, and it's renamed. If I open up my layer manager, I'll have the layer here named building. And since that's the way I use my layers for building, I want it spelled out, not that shorthand. It works better with the way I work. So that's the rename command. It's very simple to use, very quick. It doesn't do a lot, but it can help you in a lot of cases. One way that I use it quite often is in block renaming, because a lot of times I will do a copy and then a paste as a block. So let's say I want to copy this. This is my entrance. I can select the items and press Control-C on my keyboard to copy it. Now, if I press Control-Shift and V, that will allow me to paste these items to a block. So I just created a block. Well, if I select that block and I go to my properties palette, I'll see the block name. It has this crazy name. It has $C16. That's not what I want. So I'll use the rename command. Press enter, go to blocks. Here's the block. That's the old name. I'm going to call it entrance. Click OK. And now when I use the insert command, or when someone else uses the insert command, they'll find the block called entrance. They'll know exactly what that means. It's an entrance, and they'll be able to insert it. So that's one use of the rename command that I use quite a bit. And it's something that might be able to help you out. The divide and measure tools have been in AutoCAD for quite a long time. That might be evident by their names, once you hear what they do. These commands work similarly to each other, so once you know how to use one, you can use the other. The divide command creates evenly spaced point objects along the length or perimeter of an object. The measure command creates point objects at measured intervals along the length or perimeter of other objects. Let's open up the ice rink example file so we can show you how these are used. Now, both of these commands are rather simple to use, but they can be very powerful and very helpful. They're going to help you calculate spacing along a line and prevent you from having to do the math yourself, thus reducing the amount of time that takes on your part, and it will help reduce error. So let's say you need to design something that has a certain length, for example, along this circle. Now, you can use the measure and divide commands along a line, along a polyline, an arc, or a circle, any of those things. So let's say you needed to divide up this circle. You don't know how long the circle is, but you just need equal distant points along this. And let's say you need them all to be the same width, but you need 10 of them. So you come up to the Home tab on the ribbon, go to Draw, and you want to go to the Divide command. So the Divide command will divide them up evenly. The Measure command will set them at a set measured distance. So if you know what that distance is, you use measure. If you only know the number of divided objects you need, you click divide. So let's start the divide command, and we select the object we want to divide, this arc. And now we say, how many segments do we want? Well, we want this divided up into 10 segments. So we type in 10, press enter. I say, wait, it didn't do anything. Well, what the divide and measure command does is it inserts points. So you might not be able to see your points. I can see mine on here when I look at it a certain little way. It's right here. What you'll need to do is change your point mode to be able to see these. By default, point mode is set to 0, which means it's off. That means you probably won't be able to see your points, but they're there. If you go to the Home tab on the ribbon, go to the Utilities panel, go down here to the Point Style command, or you can just type in P-type. Click that, it'll bring up your point style option. So right now, a point in my drawing looks like a little bitty dot. So you might be able to see one. There's one right here. Now, if I click this option, it sets it to nothing, so you won't be able to see it. You can have a plus sign, a cross, any of these objects here, any visual styles, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to pick this one to be highly visible. Once you select that, click OK. Here are all of the points. So we divided up this circle into these 10 equal length segments. So now you can either break your circle to those points, you can draw lines from them, whatever it is that you need to do. But now you know what that length is. Now let's say that I need so many lengths around this circle that are so many units long. We can do that. Instead of using the divide command, we're going to use the measure command. To get to these commands, you can also type in their names, divide or measure. So if I click measure, I select my object here, and let's say I want them to be 10 units long. So now it's going to start where I clicked and space them all out 10 units long until I get exactly that many, and it'll fit in as many as it possibly can. So you can see here, these are 10 units, 10 units, 10 units, and then here it just can't fit anymore, so it stops. So circles can be kind of tough. Let's look at something that I might want to do. Let's say I need this rink split up into 3 equal parts lengthwise. So I want to divide this line up by thirds. So I'm going to use one of these commands. I'm going to click here and go to the divide command. Select that to start the command, pick the line, and I'm going to type in 3 because I need 3 equal sections. So it drew 2 points for me, dividing this up equally, 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm going to use a construction line, turn on my ortho, and I'm going to draw 2 lines all the way up and down, and that has divided up my rink into 3 equal sections lengthwise. So now lay this out, and maybe it's a new paint pattern that I need for a special event on my ice, or maybe I just need to show that somehow so I can see what it's going to look like, divide it up for whatever use that I have. If you have a polyline, and let's say this polyline is a fence, and it goes all the way around my building here. So that's a fence that goes around my building, and I need to know how many fence posts I'm going to use on my fence. I'm going to go up to the measure command, and I'm going to select my polyline, and I know that my fence posts are set up, let's say at an 8-foot interval. So every 8 feet, I need a post. So I press enter. That's a lot of posts that I'm going to need. So what I can do now is just count the number of points that I have, and that will tell me how many fence posts that I need. So I'm going to select all these objects here, and if I get extra stuff, that's okay. Just don't want to select any extra points, which I have right here. I don't have any anywhere else. I can come to my properties palette, and it tells me I have 274 points. So that means I'm going to need 274 posts to create my fence around my building. So that's another use that you can have for these measure and divide tools. A lot of times when we work with our designs, we need to calculate different areas, lengths, things like that. Well, AutoCAD has a built-in tool called the Quick Calc. It's a calculator tool. And in that calculator tool, you can get some information from your drawing file and put it directly into the Quick Calc palette. Now you can also do the opposite, meaning that you can get information from your calculator and apply it transparently to different commands. If you press Control 8, that will open up your Quick Calc palette. Now it works just like any other palette. You can move it around, you can expand it, stretch it, however you need to in order to get to all the different commands. Now, it has different modes with it as well. If you click on this button here, that will shorten it up, lengthen it up, however you want to use it. Now you have scientific calculator options here. Just click on the plus or minus to turn those off and on. You have your number pad, so you can click on it with your mouse right here, or you can type in on your keypad or the numbers that you have on your keyboard. You can use it to convert units of length, meters, whatever it needs to be. So if you are converting from meters and you want to convert that to feet, and you can type in that number, let's just say here 1000, press enter, and it will convert it for you. You can also add in some different variables that it has here, etc. So it does a lot of different things very quickly. So you can find your tangent, cosine, sine, log numbers, or you can just use it as a regular good old-fashioned calculator. 9 plus 6 equals. It gives you a little bit of history right up here. It gives you your final answer, and you can keep working as well. You don't necessarily have to have a calculator anymore while you're working with AutoCAD. You can just open this up and you can get right to it. So you can hide it so it's always available to you, expand it out, and get what you need. If I close this, and let's say I wanted to find the perimeter of the outside of this rink. I select this closed polyline and I go to my properties palette, and I'm going to scroll down here to the length. This is the length right here, 537 units. Well, if I click in this box, you'll see this little calculator icon show up. Well, I can click that. And when I do, it opens up my quick calc calculator, and it automatically inputs that number right into the type pad. So I can start typing. If I need to say, okay, I have 537 total links. Let's say I have the panels for the wall. Let's say they come in lengths of 12. So I just have my total length divided by 12, press enter, and this is the number of panels that I'm going to have to order. So you can do a lot of math in here very easily. I have a couple of options up here. I have this clear option that'll clear that out, clear history that'll clear that out. Otherwise, I can use a clear, or I can use a backspace to delete stuff, things like that. Now, if I click on here, this will get me coordinates. So if I left click, find some coordinates, let's say I need the center of this item right here, click on it, and it'll put my coordinates right in here. That's one way to get to it. Now, one of the really cool things about your calculator is anything that's in here, I can select it and I can right click and I can copy it. So if I copy this now, I can paste it into an email very easily, a document that I'm writing up, maybe an engineer's report, something like that, bill of materials, anything. Now I can also do something very similar. Let's say the distance between 2 points. So I click here, say I want to find the distance from this circle to that circle, and it puts it right in here. And now I can do some math with it. If I need to find an angle, say I need to find the angle from between here and here, gives me the angle. And now you notice that it keeps adding to my field here. So you need to make sure you clear out when you need something cleared. And I have other options as well. I can get to my help, and I can get to an intersection of two lines. It's defined by 4 points. So I'm going to find here, and then here, and there. And it gives me the coordinates for that point. So you have a couple of different things that you can do with the quick calc. Another thing I like to do besides length is area. This file is drawn in feet, so it gives me the square foot of this area here. I work in Civil 3D a lot, and I work for civil design. So when I do that, a lot of times I need to find areas of a lot or a lake or something like that. And I need to convert it from square feet to acres. So here's my square feet. Now I can do the math right in here, divided by 43560. That's the conversion unit for feet to acres. Click enter, and I see that this ice rink here is 0.39 acres. So Quick Calc can help you to get information from your drawing. It can do some of the math for you. It can also find some things for you, and it's all right there. You can copy and paste this bit of information out of wherever you need it to. While you're working in AutoCAD, you'll need to select objects. And we need to do that a lot. That's why there are many different ways in AutoCAD to pick your objects that you want to work with. One of those tools is called Select Similar. This command will automatically select all of the objects in your drawing that are similar to the object that you first pick. Let's open up the ice rink example file. Now to get to the command, it's very simple. All you have to do is pick something. So let's pick this circle right here. Right click and go down to the Select Similar option. and left click on it. It'll pick all of the circles that are big like that. And now you've picked all of these. So now I can very quickly, very easily change their color. I can put them on a different layer. I can do whatever I want. I can even delete them, erase them, move them, copy them. I can change their diameter or their radius. That's wrong. I need it to be an even 32 feet. And I've changed all of them very quickly. That's the power of select similar. Now, if you type in select similar on your command line, you'll get tools where I can start picking things, or I'll also get to the settings options. These are the controls for your select similar. So right now, it is selecting similar by name, meaning the object type. So in this case, it's selecting circle. It looks for a circle that's on the same layer. These are the default settings out of the box. So I've found that I've never had to really change this. Sometimes you're going to want to, sometimes you might want to pick by color, but typically name and layer fit most of my needs. So I rarely ever change this. But if you need to find everything or all of something that's on a specific plot style, then you can pick this option, or of a specific line type, whatever the case might be. Just click OK. So now that I've started the command, I've gone through those settings, I can select my circle again, press enter, and it will select similar. Now, once you've selected something, and let's say you have your selection set right now, like I have, but I want to add to it. That's fine. Just keep going. Find something else like this arc, right click, and go to the select similar again. And now it's going to look for arcs on that layer. And you can see here it's found some. You can keep adding to your selection set that way. Select an object, right click, select similar. And so my selection set just keeps growing. I've picked a lot of lines on that same layer. Now I didn't pick these lines up here because they're on a different layer. So that's the select similar. It works very quickly. It's very easy to use. It's very simple, but it's a great way to pick all of something very quickly. The intent of AutoCAD or any other computer program is to make our work easier to do. Another intent is to get our work done more quickly as possible. So the add selected command in AutoCAD, its intent is to help us work more quickly. This command is very easy to use and it can help speed up your work. Let's open up the ice rink example file. Now let's say I wanted to draw a circle. I'd have to start the circle command, pick my points, and okay, I've drawn a circle. Not that big a deal. Let's say I want to change the layer. It's on layer 0. Come over here and I want it on ice rink layer. Not that big of a deal. It took me a couple of clicks to do, really. It did. There were a lot of clicks involved. Well, let's find an easier way to do that. Here's a circle, already on the layer I want, ice rink. I select it, right click, and then I pick the add selected option. Now, add selected will automatically make that selected object's layer current, and it will start that command that creates that type of object. So in this case, the circle command. So I've had 2 clicks so far, and now I can draw my circle. That was much easier. So if I select this object, you'll see it's a circle, and it's on the ice rink layer. My current layer right now is 0. So if I draw a circle from scratch, it's on layer 0. So I have a lot more clicks to do. Now this is nice because it allows you to keep creating specific types of objects on the proper layers. Let's say I wanted to draw a line. I just select this line, right click, add selected, and now I'm drawing a line. And I'm finished. I didn't have to change layers. I just kept drawing this wall and it's on the proper layer. It's on my building layer, BDG. So now I've just added to my building. Otherwise, I'd have to start the line command, draw my lines, then select the objects and change the layers. Or I'd have to change the layer, then draw my lines. You can see it's a lot more complicated. So this is a quick tool that's easy to use. Now let's say I want to draw some hatch objects. Here's one right here. Select it, right click, go to add selected, and there's my hatch. Well, this is a different hatch pattern. Select it, right click, add selected, draw my hatch pattern there, and I'm finished. So if you have a hatch pattern in your drawing already and you need to make more of them, this is a very simple and easy tool to use. Now, this is probably one of the least complicated commands in AutoCAD. There are no settings for it. It's just a select, right click, and you start drawing. It's very simple. It is limited because you can only do what's already in your file. But the add selected command will be a huge time saver once your file has some content in it and will help you continue drawing correctly. Now that we've taken a look at how to use some of these more advanced tools, let's put these new tools to use and see what we can do with them. Let's open up the chapter project file. Now I have two project files in here. This is the one you want to use. This is the starting one. I've also saved a file of what it's going to be like once you complete this project. That way you can compare what you do to what I've done. So you have something to look at and you know you've done it correctly. So open up the chapter project advanced tools drawing file. And this is a simple file, but it's a very practical project. What we have here is an arc and two lines. Now, these lines represent a roadway center line, and we've been tasked with putting in traffic lights every 10 miles. And we're considering every unit to be a mile long in this case. So every 10 miles, we want to put a traffic light. Now, this block right here is going to represent our traffic light. It's just called box. We want to call it traffic light, so we're going to use the rename tool. We're going to use our measure and divide tools to evenly disperse these traffic light blocks across this line, but our line is incomplete. So we're going to use the join command and we're going to use the polyline edit command to create one object that we can use our measure and divide tool on. So this is something that if you do linear layouts like this, you'll use these types of tools quite often. So first, let's use the join command. Type in join, press enter, and select these two lines. Now they're coplanar and everything, it's going to work out fine. So just press enter. So now we have one great line. Now we're going to use the polyline edit tool. So type in pedit, press enter. Type in the letter M for multiple because we want to select all these objects at one time. So we're going to pick our line and our arc. Once selected, press enter. And it's asking if we want to convert these to polylines. Yes, because that is kind of the whole point of what we're trying to do here. Say yes, press enter. And once you've done that, click the join option. So that will join both of these objects into one line. We're going to have a 0 fuzz factor distance. Press enter again. Now let's select this. Now we note our length is not an even length, but that's okay. But now we have the center line of what will be our road. And we want to insert the traffic block light. Well, this block is called box. We don't want to call it box. So we're going to use the rename command. So type in rename, go to your blocks options right here for your named objects. Click on box. And let's rename it traffic light. Click OK. Now when we select this, we see the name of it is called traffic light. So that's correct. So we want to draw our traffic light or insert it every 10 feet. So the easiest way to do that is to use our measure command. So I come up here and we're going to go to measure, select this line, and we're going to type in the length of the segments, and that's going to be 10. Press enter. So now we know where our traffic light needs to go. So now we're going to use the copy command. Select this box, press enter, type in INS for insert, and then pick the box. So we're grabbing it from the insertion point of this block, which is right in the middle. Now we want it to snap to the end here. So you can type in END for end. And there it goes. And you can snap to a point. And by doing that, you use the NOD or the node option for O snaps. And when you do, you get a little glyph of a circle with an X through it. And you can keep doing that. If you have your running O snaps on like I do, you can automatically snap to node, and I have my node O snap on. Or you can just type in NOD every time, and that's fine. And I'm going to put one right at the end here, even though that's shorter than our 10 units, but that's okay. Now we need to do a little bit of cleanup. We need to get rid of our points. So I'm going to select everything because where are the points? They're really hard to get to. And I'm going to use my quick select feature. So I'm going to go through my current selection, but I'm going to filter the points. I'm just going to keep it at color equals by layer, and I'm going to include them. Click OK. There they are. And now I'm going to use my erase command. And I erased the points. The points are gone. I'm also going to erase that extra block right there. So we just used a lot of the tools that we just studied to create this basic layout to get a general idea of how many traffic lights we're going to need along this stretch of road. These could be bushes along a hedge line around your building. They could represent chairs in a room. They could be electrical outlets along a wall on a building that you're creating. It could be a lot of different things, but you get the general idea. So we've used a lot of these different tools that we've looked at in this chapter right here to do this little project. I hope you'll be able to find other ways to use these tools of selection, of joining, other manipulation in an advanced way in AutoCAD.